Welcome to Things That Matter, featuring Farm to Market, caring for kids, and age-reversing health. It's all coming right up on Things That Matter. Now, please welcome your host, Carl Krebs. Welcome to Things That Matter, featuring
Good evening, good afternoon, wherever you're watching from. It's Thursday, and that means it's Things That Matter. And I'm so glad you take the time to join us, whether you're joining us live or going to watch it later on. I'm the host of Things That Matter. My name is Carl Krebs, and my job here is to bring things to light, to the surface, that hopefully you will better understand and appreciate, because it, after all, comes down to the things that matter. On today's show, in our first segment, Farm to Market with Harry Siemens, we're going to be discussing the shadow of Donald Trump as it casts over the 49th parallel. We're going to be talking about this a lot in the months and the years to come. In our second segment, we're going to be talking with Judy Friesen about the effects of Robert F. Kennedy Jr. being appointed as the health czar in the United States under Donald Trump. What does it mean when he is, as you know, an anti-vaccine person, and he is all about the quality of health and the pharmaceuticals that are entering into our system or in their system? How does that affect us in Canada? Our third segment, we're going to turn our attention to the tragedy that unfolded in Altona. We have a little more information to share with you, and I have some very pointed comments to make about that tragedy and how we can avoid it. What can we learn from it? But right now, let's move to this message.
Imagine having no pain, sleeping through the night, having more energy, and reversing the aging process. Now imagine LifeWave doing that all naturally, without the use of harmful drugs. X39 is the most advanced patented light therapy in the world. LightWave is a simple wearable patch that you place on your body that stimulates the body to regenerate and heal itself. With more than 20 years of research and over 100 patents, LifeWave specializes in age-reversing all-natural health. Find out what the power of the patch can do for you. For more information or to join our LifeWave community, go to thingsthatmatter.ca/LifeWave. LifeWave, reversing the aging process naturally without the use of harmful drugs.
Welcome back to our first segment of Farm to Market. And in this segment today, we're going to be talking about the shadow of Donald Trump coming into Canada. And as with me always is my colleague of 50 plus years, Harry Siemens, who is a veteran ag reporter, and all things ag is Harry's tagline, but then he says Siemens says, and that's really his tagline. Harry, welcome to the show. Always a pleasure to have you here, my friend.
Yeah, it's good to be here. And of course, since you were here and, we've had winter, and it looks like it's going to be a little colder, but hopefully it's really interesting, talking to some farmers. This inch of rain that we had in many areas in Manitoba just before the snow, just perfect. And the snow, it freezes up. There'll be no soil drifting of any kind. And whatever's there is going to stick and stay put. So it's been a real, going into fall and going into fall. We're almost December, but it's looking good, And anything that happens in October, should I say August, September, October, November, is already preparation for next year's crop.
Hey, I want to ask you a quick question, a little off topic. This isn't the season. Have things changed in the producer's world? A lot of farmers would go south this time of year, but is farming so much changed that it really is a year-round, or they still get their RVs warmed up to go south?
Well, I don't know if they get their RVs. Some of them do, but there's a lot more work on farms nowadays, and sure, some of them can do it from wherever, just like you are doing your work right now from wherever. I can do mine from wherever. But you know that they used to have, when we were back in 1990, we were in a real difficult time. The inflation, everything else was, and things just weren't happening on the farm. So they said things were so tough on the farm in 1990, they had to carpool it to Florida.
Okay. Sorry, we got a call coming in somewhere here. I'll have to ignore it until they hang up.
Okay. Yeah. So anyway, it's you know what? Some go, but I think a lot of the younger folks, with children and so forth, nah, they've got to stay home and look after the family.
So what's going on out there, Harry? We got a couple of things on the list here that you've given me. I'm very excited about a guest that we got coming on next week. Maybe we'll set that one aside for the moment. And there's also something, the 2050 agenda that is making its way into a new way into our farming community. And so where do you want to go with the first segment here as we look at what's going on with our producers?
Well, it's more having to do with the indigenous people, and this isn't a slight on the indigenous people. The biggest challenge right now with the Manitoba Wildlife Federation and farmers, with the 3 town hall meetings that they had this last month, one in Brandon, one in Pilot Mound, and one in Portage la Prairie. And here's what Rob Olson of Manitoba Wildlife Federation, how he explained it to me via email, and also did an interview. The goal of these town hall meetings is to inform hunters, anglers, agricultural producers, cottage owners, anglers, and workers in the forestry mining about the new and significant threats to their access to Crown land and resources. These threats stem from the government's one-sided approach to allocating access to those Crown resources. And at this point at the table with the provincial government and also Parks Canada, we only have the Indigenous people at the table. The other people that are going to be affected by that are not there. And so we've had these town hall meetings and listening and reviewing the interview. Following the Pilot Mound meeting in Portage la Prairie, a lot of RMs, a lot of different, even the city of Winnipeg has come up and said, hey, we've got to have meetings here and see that we get to the table. So it's a little different than the one that you mentioned, but at the same time, it has to do with Crown land, resources, and so forth.
Okay, so we're going to be following that one as their developments and as these meetings take place, so we can properly understand what is it that the government is attempting to do, and it has to do with restricted access to Crown property.
Totally, and at this point, they call them ecological corridors, and there's supposedly, we've got one big one up north, and where it all started was normally they have this draw for moose hunters, right? All of a sudden, bingo, they can only have it, they cancel the draw. And from there, things started to happen. Because I
remember when that hit the front page, and I think It did hit the front page. And it is, again, I'm not putting anybody in any, bad light, but it's the Indigenous people enforcing that they have priority in the hunting area, and they are restricting anyone to come into those areas that typically want to hunt. So it's going to be a contentious issue, I think.
But it's the government doing the restricting, not the Indigenous people.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that. Good. We want to be correct.
The Indigenous people are at the negotiating table by themselves. We need to make sure, and there's some court cases already underway, and as Rob Olson mentioned to me, he said that last court case, he said it's so much bigger already. And the interesting thing, and I'm hoping that I can persuade Rob to come on the show with us on a future show. But the really interesting thing is that, a number of years ago, back in the late 80s, early 90s, I did some work with Manitoba government. At that time, Gary Filman, Harry Entz was the resource minister. And my job was to get people out to come out to these meetings. And they had to do with the resources, exactly what we're talking about. And so the Manitoba Wildlife Federation was on one side, farmers were on the other side. Now we have the Manitoba Wildlife Federation, and I asked Rob, and I told him about that. Yeah, he says somebody needed to take the leadership, and we kind of took it by default. And now we've got farmers coming to these meetings, and initially, I just got a hold of this information from one farmer. His name is Andy, and he couldn't at that point go public with any of it. But that's going to change because they're forming their own group that will have a spokesperson so that they can make this thing, go properly.
Harry, there's another topic we talked about a little while ago, but the overarching theme here is that, and I think Cam is going to be talking about this when we get him on the show next week. So just to tease that you're going to talk about that in a minute, but it is having the right people at the table. It seems like there's an oversight. They're directly or indirectly omitting important people who should be at the table to enter into these discussions. And this is again another example, I think.
And you're right. It's the important, but it's even more important than the important people. It's the people that it affects most. And they weren't aware of it until these meetings, in Brandon early in November and Pilot Mountain, Portage Prairie. Suddenly people started to come to these meetings. And now he says, we're going to be busy for 4 months straight if this keeps going, having all these different meetings in different places. And
I think when the word gets out that these meetings are happening and they're important, people are going to show up. It's kind of like the first 2050 meeting that the WMR held in Winnipeg was very sparsely attended. But boy, did they get a surprise when people found out how important this all is. I think we're going to see the same thing here, Harry, because access to Crown land is critical.
Oh, it totally, and especially cattle producers, like cattle producers, and even there they've done something. And again, Rob Olson said they're trying to flush it out. But at one point, if you were a cattle producer and you wanted to hand over the cattle farm to your son or daughter, those crown lands would be automatically go along with it. Now
the right to access would go with it.
Yes. Now he says it looks like there's a reapplication going on. And again, just to stifle and to stop, I'm not sure. He said we'd have more information on that on a later date. So
let's see if we can get Rob Olson to come on, because we'd love to hear it directly from someone who's at the table.
Yeah, and this one economic or ecological corridor, he says, is as big as the province of Nova Scotia, and it's in Manitoba. Yeah.
Wow.
So, and there's 9. They're coming. He says they're coming right to he said right to southern Manitoba, right to the U.S. border. So we'll have to wait and see. Initially, I was a little leery in talking about it too much because you're not quite sure, and But now with our last interview, he was really open, and he answered my questions that I had about it. So. Yeah, it's there's so many different things that are happening right now, and getting right back to farming and agriculture. We can maybe touch briefly on that. That was one of the points. They had COP 29 somewhere.
Yeah, I wanted to get you to talk about this. Is carbon taxing for farming, right?
Well, yeah. I mean, it's I made it a title of such, but carbon tax in Canada is affecting farming in a big, big way. And it's going up higher, and even higher. And so it's really costing a lot of money. Well, the government says, and I keep telling people, here's what the carbon tax does. You take it out of the right pocket and you build a bureaucracy and give them a good chunk of that. And then you put a little back in the left pocket. In the meantime, you've saved the environment. And so...
Well, you know what's so funny about this, Harry? I mean, is a farmer going to really operate his equipment less than he needs to get the job done? Are people really, in a practical sense, this is all about reducing the carbon footprint, as they call it. And it's really a penalty on anyone using a fossil fuel burning apparatus of any kind. But really, has it changed our habits at all in what we do? Are people flying less? Are they driving less? Are they boating less? Are they going, on less vacations with their RV. And particularly to the farmer, he's got to do what he's got to do.
Not if there isn't a margin. I talked to one.
Right, and that's
I
disaster.
talked to one
then.
farmer who farmed about 2,800 acres, Gilbert Sabaran from St. Jean. When it first came out, he says, what'll happen? And then, of course, we were also talking about the 30% drop in emissions when it came to fertilizer. He says that we can't use fertilizer. He says it's fertilizer that helps us make the profit. It grows the extra crop. And so all of this is coming into play. We'll just have to wait and see exactly where.
Well, the farmers spoke loud in the Netherlands when they tried to impose that. Boy, that was a real circus what went on there. But our farmers here, they've been patient. They've been very understanding. They're trying to work. They're trying to be at the table to negotiate. But comes a point where you got to take a stand because your livelihood's on the line.
Yeah. The other thing that's going on here has to do with animal agriculture. Like Bill Gates, I watched a video about what they're going to do to cows. The vaccines they're going to give cows so they don't have gas. And this whole thing. And in Britain right now, and there was another march with farmers where they're talking they call it the death inheritance tax so high that a farmer who said he'd been 385 years is how long the farm had been in their family. And he says, I don't know if under the proposed tax, he says, I don't think I can pass it on to my children.
Well, we have a problem. We have a problem along that lines here in Canada with farmers being able to pass their land on to their children, should their children somehow wish to continue in this race to the bottom, which is what the government is trying to do. It's trying to destroy an industry, and it's doing a very good job on it by all the things that are being imposed. But we got the same problem in Canada.
Yeah, I mean, it's a little bit different at this point than what they're having in Britain. But at the same time, like in Canada, and it's surprising, how many times I'm talking to farmers and asking whether they have what's it called, a succession plan.
Right.
And so many of these people are starting way back earlier. The ones that see where all of this is going are starting that succession plan way back when, so that nothing has to change hands. Mom and dad are looked after and so forth.
You have to be very intentional about this now so that it gets done right. So let's turn our attention, as we teased it out, to the shadow of Donald Trump and the new administration coming in. And there was an article that a colleague of yours wrote, and you've had some interaction. And tell us about our guest for next week, because I think it's going to be a really good show.
Cam Dahl, who's the general manager of the Manitoba Pork Manitoba Council, representing 600 and some hog producers in Manitoba, and so he wrote right after Trump was elected. He wrote, and he does this every few weeks. He sends out a column to all the newspapers, and I get it. So I wrote part of it for the column I put into the Winnipeg Sun. But there were 4 points. He prefaced it first of all by saying we've got to get all the stakeholders together with leadership from Ottawa so that we know what we're doing when we're starting to deal with Trump and agricultural policy from the United States. And of the 4, rising protectionism in the U.S. and a lack of Canadian preparedness. There's things happening in the U.S. already, and we're going to have to wait and see. I don't think we're going to see as big a protectionism, but at the same time, who knows? The second thing Cam wrote, prioritize balanced trade across commodities and regions. We don't want to zero out this one or leave out that one or have this one. We've got to talk all commodities, all animal agriculture. We got to get the stakeholders together so that we make sure that all farmers, because I keep talking, when I talk about pigs, a pig is a pig is a pig, whether it's in Manitoba, Saskatchewan, or British Columbia, Quebec, or Ontario. And thirdly, highlight the benefits of the U.S. Canada trade for national security. I mean, if we're not going to be involved with funding what Trump wants us to fund when it comes to NATO and so forth, then he may just as well say, well, okay, guys, bye-bye, especially if little boy Trudeau is going to be continuing to be the prime minister. And then he said, fourthly, push back on state-level trade disruptions and advocate for unified standards. When we signed CUSMA, the Canadian-U.S.-Mexico trade agreement, and that one comes up for review in 2026.
Yeah, that was the deal that superseded the NAFTA agreement, which Trump made clear right away that they were going to open up for negotiation. Then it became the CUSMA deal, if you want to call it that. Yeah, CUSMA. Right. But he has said, and already now he's opening that up again. I guess is it an annual renewal in there here?
No, it's
not annual, of course not.
No, not annual. No, I can't remember I think the last time this is probably the first review.
This is the first review because that was negotiated in 2018.
Right. So they're going to review it. But what he's meaning with this, like we have a situation in California, Proposition 12, where they've expanded all the, where you have to have so many square feet in addition to what you had before when it comes to raising pigs, chickens, whatever it may be. Well, that Proposition 12 is for the product in California. But doesn't matter whether you're shipping from New England, Canada, Quebec, wherever it is, you have to abide. You have to raise those particular animals exactly the way they say in California. So he says, we didn't sign CUSMA with individual states. We signed CUSMA with the United States. So that's going to be a really...
So that is Cam Dahl's position on that it was signed on behalf of one country to another, not to individual states. And of course, we know California, if there's anything extreme that's going to happen, it's going to start in California.
Well, we've got far more extreme proposals coming up in different states. Almost every state has one group presenting a proposition to the extreme. In one particular state that I've actually seen part of it is that it'll be illegal to kill any animal for food consumption.
Yeah. Well, you know what? I'm looking forward to having him on the show because I sure have a few questions about him and what is his level of confidence in Chrystia Freeland. She's back at the table. Of course, she was foreign affairs minister at the time. Now she's deputy prime minister. You've got Trudeau's record on how he treats Canadians. So you know that Trump's view of Canada and Trudeau and Freeland has not gone up. Their stock has dropped. It's plummeted into the basement. So I sure like to hear what Cam's going to have to say about the confidence level about having her at the table again.
Yeah, well, it's, on one hand, absolutely. On the other hand, they also are working very closely on some other issues with the Canadian Food Inspection Agency, which has to do with disease control and so forth. So on one hand, yes. On the other hand, we got to make sure we do things together. So we'll see. Yeah, Cam is, he'll tell us what he thinks, and then up to a point where he'll say, that's all I'm saying.
Yeah, of course. Can't say too much, but we want him to say as much as we can get him to say.
Oh yeah, no, I mean he will hear a lot of these things from his perspective, and they've already, he's already added to them. They're changing as we're going along.
I was thinking about this as we were getting ready for the show today, and there's something noble and righteous about a president that's saying we're going to look out for our people first and foremost, and there is something in that. And I know he's putting on a big stance. He's fired a shot across the bow of Canada and said 10% tariffs and whatnot. We're going to see what that is, but I do have a fair degree of confidence that in the approach that Canadians have and coming together with the right people at the table and not the wrong ones. Lord knows we don't want Trudeau at the table. The guy is a weakling. He's sold our country out. All you got to listen to is guys like Kevin O'Leary talking about the dire state that Canada is in right now. And we've got to come there with a certain confidence and a certain tenacity. And I've always said, respect is something that you earn. And you're going to have to earn that at the table when you start talking with him and his negotiators. But there's a lot riding here. We are the biggest trader with the U.S., and they have a vested interest too. And our natural resources and all the things that we have that they're looking for, it's a strength position that we have. We just have to say that strength without becoming overly demanding. But it's give and take. It's always give and take.
Well, today he made it very clear that day one, Keystone Pipeline will be open.
That's a great thing for us.
Oh, like he said that, but today he reemphasized that on day one of Biden's presidency, they shut her down. On day one of his presidency, and there were at that point, there were 2,500, 3,000, many more people that all lost their jobs the day Biden shut that down. And so he said, he's including that in the drill, baby, drill. Where they're going to become independent, self-sustaining, and a lot of that's going to, have to come right from here.
Yeah, amazing. Well, Harry, we've got a couple of minutes left, but there was another item you had here about a young couple that is going to Lethbridge for some kind of national honor. Tell us about that. That's a good story.
Oh, you know what? I did that interview about not quite 2 weeks ago with Paige and Marcus Jewett, a young couple. They have their children, I think 5 and 3 or something, and they're third generation farmers, but four generations are living on the farm because of their small kids, right? And so it's mom and dad are there, grandma's there, and they're from Kleefeld, and it's the Manitoba Outstanding Young Farmers Award. And it's really put together by Canada's Young Outstanding Farmers Program. And we have a president, Danny Penner. He's actually the son of a former MLA, Jack Penner, from the Halpstadt area. He's the president of the Canadian Outstanding Young Farmers Program. And so they won this already back in March. But they do 4 things on their farm. Number one, their dairy. And they have 49 Swiss purebred Swiss cattle. Then they have a hay business, and then they do consulting, and then they had one other one, slips my mind, but 4 different things. And then when I asked them, I said, "What's the secret?" And I had them both on the phone. And what's the secret to working together? And the young woman just said right off the bat, making sure we love each other, and we're not out there to set any targets. We're out there to do this together. So one does the books for this, the other one does the books for that. One looks after the cattle, the other one looks after the fields. And so it was really good.
It's a real family business, what you're describing there.
Totally.
And they're all
100%.
working together.
Yeah. And hats off to, Paige and Marcus Jewett of Kleefeld, Manitoba. Next week, 27th of November, through December the 1st, they will be at the National Convention in Lethbridge, where there's 7 regions represented at that one.
Very cool. Well, Harry, we've got just over a minute left here. And there's an old saying, never end one engagement without beginning another. So let's just set the stage for next show in the final minute that we have.
Well, we're going to have Cam Dahl, who's the general manager for the Manitoba Port Council. And he's going to be on talking about what it really means to be in the shadow, as you mentioned it, of President-elect Donald Trump. And, I think if we can do it right, we can really work together. But we'll look forward to having him on the show next week, Thursday. And if I can work it out the following week, who knows? We may be able to have Rob Olson with the Manitoba Wildlife Federation, because that would be also a very interesting show. There's so much happening, but as I've said so many times, we keep working, we keep looking at things, a positive mental attitude to encourage, serve, and inspire others will motivate me to do my best. That's Seaman Says.
Fabulous. That's a great note to end on. and we'll look forward to having you back as well as our guest next week. Thanks so much, Harry, for this. Appreciate it very much. Well, as we end this Farm to Market segment now, we are getting ready to go into our age reversing health, and that brings on Judy Friesen, my 38-year health coach consultant, and we're waiting for her to arrive. And in the meantime, we've got a message here for you.
Imagine having no pain, sleeping through the night, having more energy, and reversing the aging process. Now imagine LifeWave doing that all naturally, without the use of harmful drugs. X39 is the most advanced patented light therapy in the world. LightWave is a simple wearable patch that you place on your body that stimulates the body to regenerate and heal itself. With more than 20 years of research and over 100 patents, LifeWave specializes in age-reversing all-natural health. Find out what the power of the patch can do for you. For more information or to join our LifeWave community, go to thingsthatmatter.ca/LifeWave. LifeWave, reversing the aging process naturally without the use of harmful drugs. Welcome to Age Reversing Health, where we discuss ways to help you go far beyond just surviving this life. With practical and proven solutions to literally turning the clock back on aging so you can live your best life. Live younger for longer. Now, here's your hosts, Carl Krebs and Judy Friesen.
Well, welcome back. My name is Carl Krebs. I'm the host of Things That Matter. And in our second segment, Age Reversing Health, we're going to be talking about the effect of Robert F. Kennedy Jr., who is taking a very, very sizable role in the new Trump administration as he promises to revamp the FDA, which is, of course, the Federal Drug Administration in the United States. But the question we have is, how is this going to affect us here in Canada with the amount of trade that we have ongoing with the United States? And Judy Friesen is just joining us right now. She is my co-host on this segment. Judy is a 38-year health coach and a consultant, and I go to her when I have questions about health. So, Judy, if you can hear us, welcome to the show.
Hi there, Carl. Good to be with you.
Well, you know, we gave you a few weeks off. I mean, you've been globetrotting. Let's just revise. Let's just do a quick review. There was Japan with the family, and then there was back to Canada, and then there was a LifeWave convention in Dallas, which I saw you at. And then, of course, there was a trip that you'd earned through LifeWave to go to Punta Cana. Have I got everything, or did I miss something? Oh, no, then there are other trips for board memberships.
Right. I'm on the board of an international charity, and so I just came back from being in Chicago for 4 days and returned just this last Sunday.
Wow, that is a busy schedule, my dear, no doubt.
Yeah. But I'm doing good and ready to hit the road running and get a lot of good stuff done.
Well, you know, and I'm going to start with this video. I think it does quite a good job of encapsulating what Robert F. Kennedy Jr., of course, he's the son of Robert F. Kennedy, who we know tragically was shot. And he's also the nephew of the other Kennedys that we know so well. So he plays prominently in politics. He is an environmental lawyer by trade. He is, and this one is interesting, he is against vaccinations. He is anti-vax as it comes, and he has spoken out very clearly about how he feels about the vaccinations. And if you actually Google it, Wikipedia will list him as a conspiracy theorist. So we've got a very interesting man taking on a very prominent position with the Trump administration come January 20th. And I believe it was in Donald Trump's acceptance speech that, or perhaps just an interview they did, he said, I told Robert, you can have this and that, just leave the oil to me. Everything else he has carte blanche access to. So, you know, when we talk about the Federal Drug Administration, the FDA as we call it, you know, I thought it was actually bigger than it is, but it really is a medium-sized agency within the United States, but it is very powerful, Judy. We know that firsthand because they have the ability to say what can hit the market and then what you can say about that. Talk a little bit about that, because we've both been in that position, you know, subject to what the FDA will allow companies to say.
Yeah. Pardon me. Yes, absolutely. The FDA is the watchdog. They see themselves as protecting the public. So they review every new drug, every new vitamin, every new herb, every new medical device that comes to market. And they have the power to shut down a company as large as LifeWave if they say and they deem that they don't think that our product is safe or efficacious, or if they think that we are claiming things that we shouldn't be claiming. They have huge, huge power. It's interesting, though, Carl, that they spend far more time scrutinizing natural health products than they do very toxic drugs that come to market. And you know what, Carl? It's all about the money.
I wanted to bring that up, but you beat me to it because, you know, and it is about the money. And I believe in this video, we're going to hear some of what RFK has to say about the influence of the pharmaceutical giants in the FDA. But it is shocking to see that they're going after natural health products, which LifeWave is just one of many. But we were restricted for a better part of a year for most of our products, which never had any challenges in the courts. There were never any complaints. There was never any kind of issues with somebody, you know, suffering from using the product. But we're not the only one. We're not the only company. And many other companies, when they came under the scrutiny, and this is Health Canada now, which works, you know, in conjunction with the FDA. I don't want to mix my metaphors here, but Health Canada, FDA, similar kind of function in that they have the ability to shut you down and just hold you in a holding pattern for as long as it takes to either for you to acquiesce. And in this case, LifeWave, it has had their druthers with the FDA and with Health Canada, but they've battled back. And I'm excited to see this man take the helm and do something about something that's long overdue.
Absolutely, yeah. And what Health Canada did was simply ask us for a name change. I mean, for heaven's sakes, it wasn't reformulating the patches or rechanging the product or anything. And we had all the studies that they accepted that were still good, still showed that they do what they do, that we're not claiming cures, and yet they asked us to change the name. And so it can be as small as just, you know, changing a name on a product that can hold you up for over a year. But yes, I think that that we have a lot more freedoms coming, and there'll be more opportunities for Canadians to get their hands on certain products that are natural. Like, for example, you can't even buy more than 1,000 international units of vitamin D in Canada, Carl. You can't. And yet, my own osteoporosis doctor said, Judy, when you're living north of the 61st parallel or whatever that's called, the 40, what is it called when we live north?
49.
49th parallel, sorry. When you live that far north, you're not getting the right refraction of the sun, and therefore you're not able to make vitamin D. Even if you're out naked all summer, you're not able to make enough vitamin D. Most of us cover ourselves up most of the summer, maybe short sleeves, but you need far more skin. And anyway, my point is that the FDA or the Health Canada has restricted us from getting what my own doctor told me I needed to take, which is 5,000 to 10,000 IUs of vitamin D. Well, guess what? I got to take 10 of those stupid little suckers to get what I need for my dose per day, because for some silly reason they deem that Canada can't have more than 1,000. But you go down to the States and you can get 5,000 and 10,000 IUs of vitamin D in 1 or 2 little capsules. So, like, what is going on? I believe that Canada is going to help us huge.
Actually, I hope so too. Let's go to this video, which I have already mentioned.
Mm-hmm.
All right, a couple of things here popping up. Sorry for that, folks. Just give me a minute. We'll get this rolling right away. All right. New computer to boot. I love challenging myself. Okay, let's go here. And we'll enlarge the screen. And away we go.
RK Jr. is throwing his support behind Donald Trump, in part because he and the former president agree on a number of key issues. And that includes the American diet and what's in our food.
I also want to salute Bobby's decades of work as an advocate for the health of our families and our children. Nobody's done more. We talked about, not about the things that separate us because we don't agree on everything, but on the values and the issues that bind us together. And one of the issues that he talked about was having safe food and ending the chronic disease epidemic. And don't you want a president that's going to make America healthy again?
Before his announcement, I spoke with Kennedy about this very topic and a potential position in the Trump White House. Take a look. I thought it'd be great to just kind of look at some of these items because parents are encountering these food items in grocery stores everywhere. Maybe we could just start right here with seed oils. We're hearing a lot about seed oils. Why should people be worried about these kind of products?
Seed oils are one of the most unhealthy ingredients that we have in foods. And seed oils, the reason they're in the foods is because they're heavily subsidized. They're very, very cheap, but they are associated with all kinds of very, very serious illnesses, including body-wide inflammation,
Right.
which affects all of our health. It's one of the worst
I just want to make sure, is that coming through, guys? Just 1 second here, sorry.
things you can eat, and it's almost impossible to avoid. If you eat any processed food, you're going to be eating seed oil.
Right, and it's interesting the government subsidizes it. Why would the government want to subsidize something that's going to make people sick, and then in the end, we all end up
Let me
paying?
just back this up here. Sorry for that, guys.
And ending the chronic disease epidemic. And don't you want a president that's going to make America healthy again?
Before his announcement, I spoke with Kennedy about this very topic and a potential position in the Trump White House. Take a look. I thought it'd be great to just kind of look at some of these items because parents are encountering these food items in grocery stores everywhere. Maybe we could just start right here with seed oils. We're hearing a lot about seed oils. Why should people be worried about these kind of products?
Seed oils are one of the most unhealthy ingredients that we have in foods. And seed oils, the reason they're in the foods is because they're heavily subsidized. They're very, very cheap, but they are associated with all kinds of very, very serious illnesses, including body-wide inflammation.
Right.
Which affects all of our health. It's one of the worst things you can eat, and it's almost impossible to avoid. If you eat any processed food, you're going to be eating seed oil.
Right, and it's interesting the government subsidizes it. Why would the government want to subsidize something that's going to make people sick, and then in the end, we all end up paying for that in terms of healthcare costs, which are skyrocketing?
Yeah, because that is a direct result of corruption. About 75% of FDA's budget comes from regulated industry, and that means food processors and pharmaceutical industry. All of them profit from a sick population.
You know, a big item that, and by the way, it's getting very expensive, are cereals. Why is the food coloring in particular bad?
Food coloring, you see here yellow food coloring, that is a petroleum product. Mm-hmm. It's associated with really, with depression. It's associated with autoimmune injuries and ADHD.
Yeah.
These, and red dye also is very bad. In Europe, these same companies are producing the same products, but they're using natural coloring. But here they can get away with it. We have about almost 1,000 chemicals that are in our food that are either outright banned in Europe or actively discouraged. So you wouldn't be able to buy this kind of stuff in Europe. You ask about why it's so cheap, why it's so ubiquitous.
It's because we subsidize the worst foods. We subsidize it with about 70% of our food stamp program is to process foods, which are all poison.
Right. One of the things that's interesting is you'll see on labels natural flavors, which is this catch-all phrase that I guess was lobbied for, but the ingredients in natural flavors are not really natural.
No. In our country, natural flavors are chemical products. So you can't trust what's on the ingredient label, and the reason for that, again, is government corruption. It's that the agency, the USDA, the FDA, have been captured by the industries they're supposed to regulate. And they all have an interest in subsidies and then in mass poisoning the American public.
Yeah, I want to talk about pesticides, and then let's talk about the policy. So let's talk about the pesticides and the things that worry you about. I mean, this looks like fresh food, right? What should I be worried about here?
Yeah, I mean, the irony is, like, for example, my wife loves kale, and she had the impression that kale is actually good for you. If it's organic, it's very good for you, but most kale and strawberries, for example, grapes, are contaminated with pesticides, and particularly the Environmental Working Group has found what they call the dirty dozen, some of the worst pesticides on these products. So, you know, I look at a strawberry and I think, oh, this is a healthy food, right. But in most cases, unless it's organic, certified organic, you are getting something that's actually hurting you.
What can be done at a government level to stop this and make people get healthy?
Yeah, as president, I'll issue an executive order on day one that anybody who is recommending food products in USDA or FDA at any of those committees, if you are going to be on those committees, you have to have no conflict of interest. We spend 5 times our military budget on chronic disease.
Yeah.
And it's made us the sickest population in the world. And if you wonder why we're the sickest people in the world, why do we have these epidemics of ADHD and depression and all these kind of psychiatric illnesses that have been linked by the science to these kind of foods, to the ingredients of these foods? And why do we have these neurological disorders, all this epidemic of autoimmune disease?
So many of these products are geared towards children, which I think is what's really tragic about it. It's sort of like you're putting them at a very early age on this pathway to chronic disease, and then at the end of that is pharma to sort of cure whatever the food did to you.
The advisors who actually choose the nutrition guidelines are almost all of corrupted. They're conflicted.
Are you willing to take on a position like this in the Trump administration as health czar?
Well, one way or the other, I'm going to be fighting to get this stuff out of our foods. I mean, we're poisoned. We have a generation of kids that are swimming around in a toxic soup right now. And we need to, we're betraying them. We're supposed to be taking care of our kids, and we're letting these industries corrupt our agencies and mass poison them. And, nobody in the world has a chronic disease epidemic of the kind that we have in this country.
Yeah, it's true. I think it's a sleeper issue of this election. So I really appreciate you coming on, explaining this, breaking it down, and laying out your policies.
Rachel, thanks for having me, and thanks for paying attention to this.
All right. Well, that was, as I said, that is the new health czar, and that was actually filmed in August when RFK was still on the ballot in those different states. But it was almost a casting forward because now he has that authority. Judy, I want to ask you a question here because it struck me as I was listening to it again. If America is going to impose such strict guidelines on the food and the quality of the food and deal with those issues that he mentions, I would assume then that Canadian producers of that same food will not be able to ship that food into America. So now we have the connector between what the FDA will do and what will happen in Canada. Is that not accurate?
Yeah, I think that's going to be accurate. I mean, time will tell, right? We're going to find out what's going to happen and how it's going to affect our Canadian manufacturers, our producers, the people who are putting all kinds of stuff even into our foods here in Canada. So I'm hoping and praying that what this man what Kennedy is hoping to do in the U.S. is going to spill over into Canada and our regulations here as well.
Well, absolutely, because you and I have talked in previous programs the obesity problem. I could go to another video here of Dr. Cassie Means talking about the obesity and all the things that stood out years ago that are now commonplace. You see obese children everywhere. This has a lot to do with the label. I think one of the most shocking things he said there is you can't trust the label.
Yeah, you
Most
can't
of us are now reading labels when we go to the supermarket, including me.
Exactly. Like I read labels a lot because I am lactose intolerant. And so I actually need to find out if there's any kind of dairy, whey, or other types of cow products. But the labels are very, very difficult to understand. Some people who have a very high issue with any kind of monosodium glutamate, MSG, we often know that that's often found in Chinese food. But guess what? They changed the name. So now if you look in the label and you don't see any MSG, you think you're safe. You're not. They actually have changed the name to different. They're doing juggling acts with the chemical.
It's like a shell game. It's like a shell game.
It's a shell game. And so you're right. The connection between what was just talked about, which is all of these toxins and chemicals in our foods, they actually, you're very right, Carl, to bring up the topic of obesity. And people might think, well, wait a minute. Well, why are you talking about obesity? Well, it's not just about sugar and fat in a lot of our products, but did you know that when you take in a lot of these chemicals year after year after year after year, they actually interfere with your endocrine system. And the endocrine system is also affected and affects how you metabolize your foods. And so you wonder if you're dieting, if you're trying to be careful, if you've got a toxic load in your body is not functioning right. And it's actually not willing to drop the fat because guess what? Fat is like an insurance package to the body. The way the human being was made is to keep fat in case there's a famine or in case you can't go and catch that bear or that elk to give you your winter's meat. But now in this day and age, we've got a ton of people, especially kids, that have got so many toxins in their bodies that even if they did stop eating Twinkies and McDonald's hamburgers, they're not going to drop the weight because their whole hormone system is all messed up.
Okay, so we've stated the problem. You touched on one right there, hormones. And let's get to a natural cure because we know that if they create the problem, they're going to give you the solution. So we have pharmaceutical influence into our food system, into every facet of it. And he used some strong language there to accuse them of what they're doing.
Yeah.
So now they create the problem. And guess what? Here's a pill to deal with that problem and another pill to deal with the problem that the other pill, like this is a conveyor belt that never ends. How do we do it naturally? Tell us about the natural solutions that you recommend to your clients, because we got to give people natural as much as we can.
We do, and we can't sit around waiting for government to fix all these problems. I mean, bless his heart, Kennedy is going to try to fix it. But you know what? All these bills pass and all these regulations, it's going to take time before it trickles down to the average Joe like you and me. And so what are we going to do about our health while we're waiting for the root of the problem to be solved, which is to stop these manufacturers from loading our foods with salt and sugar, which gets us addicted to it, and adding all these chemicals to make the matter worse. So one of the natural things to do, first and foremost, is to stop eating at fast foods and start to purchase in the grocery store from the outside of the aisles, not going on the inside, because the inside of your grocery store are where you've got a plethora of foods that are all a different combination of salt, sugar, and fat. And so we've got every kind of cracker and Twinkie and whatever else is available. But if you go to the outside perimeter where there's your fresh food, so to speak, you're a little.
You got dairy and cheese and meat and produce. They're all on the outside. It never dawned on me, but that is an amazing observation.
Stay in the perimeter. But even as we've heard, even getting these vegetables, the next thing you do, besides going perimeter grocery shopping and stopping to go to a lot of fast foods, is understanding that you need to wash your vegetables in a very special way because there's so many toxins on the surface. You're not going to get rid of it if it was growing with toxins. You're going to be consuming that food because it's in the flesh of the cucumber, it's in the flesh of the orange. But at least wash the outside of your vegetables, and you can make a simple solution of baking soda, vinegar, or hydrogen peroxide and water. And you can buy these fruit or vegetable cleaning sprays, but they're expensive and you don't need to do it. You can make your own. It's just a very small amount of hydrogen peroxide and water, and spray your vegetables or soak them in your sink in water, and it will get rid of a lot of the surface stuff. But the most important thing is you're not going to get rid of a lot of the toxins that are in the oats and in the fruits that we buy. So what do? You have to eat, and you have no idea. Even though I agree with Kennedy that buying organic would help you, but you know what, Carl? There is all kinds of stuff going on with the organic seal. People are buying off people to put the organic seal on stuff that's not organic, or the organic farmer is farming right beside the farmer that's spraying, and the wind carries it over. I mean, you can't win. So that's why I love doing what I'm doing as a health consultant and giving people real options to protect and help their bodies with this toxic load, because you just can't eat as well as you think you can, no matter how much you spend on organics. One of the things is to detoxify, and the other thing is that you and I both know that we have a very, very powerful detoxification method using phototherapy that helps people to start to detoxify some of these heavy metals and these other toxins out of their body.
Okay, so we're back on detoxing, which it seems to be, it's always present there, that it's coming in our air, our water, our food, and we've got to get those toxins out. So once we clean house, how do we prevent, because there's an addictive nature to some of this food, like Americans and Canadians are addicted to sugar. How do we get rid of that addiction? We've got a few minutes left here, about 5 maybe, but I want to talk about how can we help people to break those addictions, because they are addictions.
So Carl, addictions is very difficult because there's a signal going to a part of the brain that keeps wanting you to stay addicted. It gives you these endorphins. It makes you want to have the sugar and the salt, even if you're not even hungry anymore. And we all know that willpower does not really work for 95% of the population, because if it did, then people would stop smoking easily, or they'd stop drinking if they are overdoing it with alcohol. So when it comes to sugar and fat, Carl, just toughing it out and saying, I'm going to have the willpower, I'm going to do it, it's very, very difficult. So let's talk turkey here. Your willpower isn't going to keep you going for very long. Let's just be honest. It's very, very, very difficult. But I've come across a phototherapy patch from the company LifeWave that actually helps to send the signal, a healthy signal to your brain to turn off that desire to make you want to have the bad stuff. And when I use this patch, it's called SP6. And it's a special acupuncture point on the body. When I use that, Carl, I went grocery shopping when I had it on, and I would always be looking and staring at the chips or the chocolate bars, because that's my weakness. And I looked at them, and my brain had this light signal going to it. And I looked at the chocolate and the chips, and I actually picked it up because I was going to put it in my cart. I put it back because it seemed icky to me. And I thought, what's happened to me? It's because I had this light therapy patch on. It's simple. I put it on and it sends a light signal and it stops me from craving, whether it's smoking, or whether our listeners have a problem with alcohol or fat or sugar, whatever it is, it's going to reduce your appetite for whatever it is you're craving. It's amazing.
Well, that is amazing. And there are no side effects, because LifeWave has no side effects to any of their patches, correct? They're all natural in the way that they're stimulating the body, as you say, sending a better message to the brain to break that compulsion to say, I want that, I need that. No, you don't. And suddenly when you start to break that communication that's happening, the temptation kind of naturally goes away.
It does. I am living proof. And I've worked with some of my clients who also have issues with indigestion or with our hormones, hot flashes, PMS. And it also seems to regulate that. Why? Because it's actually regulating through your hormone system. But it sends this wonderful, gentle light signal that seems to not only help to calm down your hormones, but also it helps you to stop having that craving. And it really it really works. I cannot say enough about using this patch for a couple months, and you'll see your weight drop, you'll see your cravings go down, and even your hormones might be more regulated and more brought to a homeostasis.
Yeah, I was going to say there's another aspect to this patch that I read, that it has a metering effect on the hormones, right? Kind of balancing them. We've got about a minute and a half left here, but I just want to give that over to you to summarize how people can break this habit, and the fact that we need the help of our American friends to hopefully influence the Canadians that are doing the same thing as the Americans. So in the final minute, give us your summary of how this is going to play out. Best guess.
Yeah, I really hope that things are going to really improve here in Canada. But until then, I think we have to take matters into our own hands, eat well, try to eat organic, try to do the perimeter of the grocery store. And if you're struggling with your own problem with will to stop yourself, it's a losing battle for many people. And I think that this technology that we've got using a light therapy patch is the answer to helping you to get a hold of your cravings and to actually start to help yourself.
Yeah, and you know what? We're offering hope here, because sometimes that's what people need, because without hope, it's very, very difficult to function and to overcome these battles that we all have. Well, Judy, as always, thank you for being here. I'll look forward to next week's episode with you on age reversing health. And this is about age reversing health, because if we start now, we can stop that aging process. Thank you so much, Judy, for being with us.
You're welcome. And if people want more information, Carl, maybe you can help them to find you or I through some kind of a website.
Yep, absolutely. info@thingsthatmatter.ca, and we'll forward your question on to Judy. Thank you again, Judy.
You're welcome. Good night.
All right. Well, that ends our age reversing health. And we are now going to move into our second segment, which is caring for kids. And I just found out that my guest is unable to attend. But let's start the show, Brad, with caring for kids.
Imagine having no pain, sleeping through the night, having more energy, and reversing the aging process. Now imagine LifeWave doing that all naturally, without the use of harmful drugs. X39 is the most advanced patented light therapy in the world. LightWave is a simple wearable patch that you place on your body that stimulates the body to regenerate and heal itself. With more than 20 years of research and over 100 patents, LifeWave specializes in age-reversing all-natural health. Find out what the power of the patch can do for you. For more information or to join our LifeWave community, go to thingsthatmatter.ca/LifeWave. LifeWave, reversing the aging process naturally without the use of harmful drugs. Welcome to Caring for Kids, where we discuss physical, emotional, and spiritual needs of children in a positive, loving environment that promotes good decision-making. We believe in parental responsibilities and setting an example that will guide your children along life's journey. We want to raise the issues that matter to parents and children alike. Now here's your host, Carl Krebs.
Welcome back. My name is Carl Krebs. I'm the host of Things That Matter. And in our third segment, Caring for Kids, I want to go back to something that my heart has fastened onto since this tragedy unfolded last Friday in Manitoba. And it is, to use the word tragic, seems inadequate to describe what happened just outside of Altona. And I just want to give you a little bit of context as to what has been reported. Have a listen to this, please.
This is the intersection near Altona where the crash happened. Family and friends stopped by on Sunday to come through the wreckage in search of answers, grieving the loss of a mother and her 8-year-old daughter.
Nobody wants to lose their children like this, ever.
Susan and Peter Unger drove all the way from Leamington, Ontario, hoping to pick up the pieces. Sarah Unger, a devoted Christian, teacher, and the couple's daughter-in-law, was heading southbound when her SUV was hit by a semi traveling east. The 35-year-old was pronounced dead at the scene. Sarah's daughter, Alexa, was airlifted to hospital where she died of her injuries.
Alexa was a hyper little girl. She was full of energy all the time and always hugging us when she can't sit on her lap, just wanted to do stuff with us.
She was a very lovable person.
Yeah, everybody loved her.
Yeah, so it's not easy to come to see something like this.
RCMP said the driver of the semi, a 25-year-old man from Brampton, Ontario, failed to stop at the intersection's stop sign. He was treated in hospital and then released. Police say they expected to lay charges, but none have been announced yet. Sarah leaves behind a husband and a 10-year-old child. Susan and Peter say nothing can bring her and their granddaughter back, but that they at least want something that can help explain this loss.
It shouldn't have happened. I don't know, like I said, I don't know what he was thinking. You can hear the rumble of the stop sign. Why didn't he respond to that?
The community is raising money and praying for the father and his son.
Well, it still hits me hard when I'm looking at that, thinking, what's happening here is a tragedy that we cannot find the words for that. But here we are today, and I want to give you a bit of an update because this is fairly fresh, I think, that the RCMP have in fact now laid charges against the 25-year-old driver. They've released his picture and they have released his name. And right now, the charges that he's facing are the investigation has determined that he did travel and exceeded the stop sign, and he's been charged with causing death by using his vehicle as he did. So what we have now is, as the RCMP went to try to lay those charges, the man is now missing. He is in the wind, so to speak. And what's happened is now it's turned into a Canada-wide warrant for his arrest. And so what we've got here is a tragedy that now actually is in many ways an insult to the process, to the judicial process, which these people should be afforded in their grief. We can all know for sure that nothing that will happen to this young man can bring back the mother and the daughter. We know that for a fact. But what we can have is a sense of closure on it. I want to go and tell you a little bit from the perspective of driver. And my guest who was going to join me is not only a veteran driver of many, many years, he actually is the supervisor with the company that I work for. And he has direct contact with drivers. And I can tell you that the company I work for has a very, very strict policy on safety. And we have, as many do have in their trucks now, cameras that are mounted to the windshield. Some of them will record inside activity, what's going on in the cab of the truck, but every one of them will for sure record the outside. Some companies have a policy on the invasion of privacy, so they don't activate the inside camera. But I can assure you that if this truck driver had a camera in his truck, we're going to know a lot when that footage is released, because the system that is most popularly used is called the LITEC system. And this camera sees and measures everything that happens in that truck. For example, if I were to have an accident and I told my company that I had applied the full force of the brakes and wasn't able to stop, that camera knows exactly how much brake pressure I put on my brakes. It's either going to corroborate me or make me a liar. This kind of surveillance that's in trucks is there for a reason, because it is there to not only protect the driver, but also to create what's called coachable moments. This incident is amazing because I am very familiar with that stretch of highway. And as the grandfather there spoke, he said the rumble trips. What he's talking about are grooves that are put into the pavement at two different locations as you approach that stop sign from the west, traveling east, which is exactly the way the truck driver was heading. And when you hit those rumble strips, even if you are half asleep, it's going to wake you up because it feels like you're going off-road. It really shakes your vehicle. So you've got that. Plus you have a oversized stop sign. That's not a regular stop sign at that intersection. And that's what we have today. But the point I want to bring about is with the cameras in the truck, if that truck driver had a habit of running stop signs, which we don't know, then the company has to do their due diligence and phone him up and bring him in for a consult to challenge him as to and to ask questions. Why is he doing that? Because the system will automatically assess points on the driver, and the more points that driver gets, trust me, the insurance company will eventually uninsure that company. I want to make you aware that this kind of surveillance and this kind of protection is in place in many trucks. It is in every one of the trucks for the company that I work for. And I can assure you, you can't get away with anything. So what we have perhaps are bad habits manifesting themselves in a most tragic way here. But I'm hoping that this investigation will go very far because we do have to look into how this man came to get his CDL. How did he get a commercial driver's license? Where did he go to school? Was it a reputable school? Because the Brampton area of Ontario has been covered, and I'll cover it in another show, with driving schools that operate under the table. You can walk into some of these schools and offer them a reduced amount in cash, because a CDL driving course could be as much as $10,000 for a driver to be properly equipped to operate these vehicles. But some of these schools are offering reduced prices for cash under the table, and they fast track the process, and they're putting drivers out on the road that are not qualified. Now, that is almost criminal. In fact, it is criminal at that point that a qualified instructor who has the qualifications by the province to instruct and teach people to operate heavy equipment is going to accept cash. And it is well documented. So we need to go in there. The investigation has to go right to the source of himself coming to the country that he came. Was he born here? Did he immigrate here? Where did he get his CDL? What is the school all about that gave him that CDL? How is the company's track record in safety? Because all of this has a Humboldt overtone to it. And we know the tragedy that happened with the Humboldt Broncos and that terrible accident which claimed the lives of many young hockey players when a semi-driver exceeded the stop sign. In that case, that stop sign is really well marked. I've been in that area as a driver. It is a flashing red stop sign, which we don't have at the intersection of the highway where this young woman and her daughter were killed. But you see, what we have are issues of safety with the trucking company, issues of safety with the driver qualifications. Now, let me turn your attention to something, because this is a true story. As most of you know, I'm a long-distance driver, and I've been in almost every state. In fact, I have been, I think, in every state and almost every province in Canada. And this goes back a few years when I was running produce. I hauled a reefer trailer, and I would bring a fresh and frozen meat and French fries, perhaps, to the Mexican border. And there would be long waits for the Mexican trucks to come, and then the cross-docking and all of that. So that sets the stage. In this case, I'm in El Paso, Texas, and waiting for my turn to go to the border to do the cross-dock. And while I'm sitting there, I observe a CR England, and I'm going to just name it because CR England and other companies like Swift have a reputation out there for doing things that get them in trouble. And so I watched the CR England truck attempting to back into the dock. It was pretty much a standard backup. It really wasn't complicated other than the pole that was in the middle of the parking lot. And while I had nothing to do, I thought I might as well go out there and just see, because these guys were having one heck of a time getting that truck into the dock. So I jumped up on his running boards and I says, do you mind? I can give you, oh, I really appreciate it. I thought, well, that was a peculiar response, because a lot of truck drivers would say, get off my running board. You got no business here. I can handle this. But as I coached him into the dock, and there were two young men in there, and we got the truck in the dock, and I talked to them for a little bit, and I said, so how long have you guys been driving? He says, only a few weeks. I said, but both of you in the same truck? Yeah, we just graduated from our driver training school, and they put us both in the same truck. That's a recipe for disaster. To think that two guys operating an 80,000-pound vehicle did not have the skill set to even dock it. I wonder what they would be like in some of the adverse conditions that we as long-distance drivers have to be in. This is a matter of utmost importance that companies who graduate these people, why wouldn't you put him in a truck with a veteran and a junior driver, a rookie, and give them the necessary time and space with some one-on-one coaching? But here we have two guys in the same truck, and they couldn't even back it into the dock. Folks, I've seen all kinds of stuff on the road, stuff that literally scares the pants off me. But here's a perspective I want to offer. This tragedy is not going to leave us for a long time. The funeral is still pending. It's still fresh. There's so much healing to happen here. But I remember reading one of the reports of the incident of what happened. And there was a lady who was following the SUV that had the collision with the semi-truck. And she noticed that that semi was approaching that intersection at a high rate of speed, and she slowed down. The SUV in front, which had the mother and daughter in it, did not. Now we know where that went. I want to be absolutely clear and very sensitive in what I say next. It is entirely the fault of the truck driver what happened here. It is entirely upon him and everybody else who might have had a part in putting this unqualified driver, and I have to say he's unqualified to do that. But we don't know the circumstances in the truck. The number one reason for accidents on the road today is distracted driving. And that's for all vehicles. The number one accident reason for accidents in commercial driving is driver fatigue, followed by distracted driving. I don't know if that guy fell asleep and didn't wake up in time, even with the rumble strips, to shake him to an awareness that he was fast approaching a stop sign. I don't know if he was distracted on his phone, as some drivers are given to do that, and sometimes at the most ridiculous times. We also don't know what was going on in the SUV with the mother and daughter. Children can sometimes be a handful, and it's easy to lose focus on the road. What I want to say next is this. If it is so important, we as commercial drivers often say we have to have our heads on swivels. We're constantly watching the traffic, not only in front of us, of course, but to the left and to the right, with multiple mirrors to take away as many blind spots as we have. But when you're approaching an intersection and you see a truck that is traveling at a high rate of speed, and you know that that truck has a stop sign, and you can clearly see he's not going to be able to bring that truck, slow down, stop. It doesn't matter if you have the right of way. You don't want to be right and dead. You want to be safe at home with your family. And if we could go back there and we could see it, we're all experts at that point. But I want to encourage you as drivers out there who operate the smaller vehicles as opposed to us that operate the bigger ones. There are some bad drivers out there. I'm embarrassed to be a part of this profession and see what I see going on in this country as I travel all across this country. And the worst that I see is when the weather conditions turn on us. That's where the skill level really comes out in full force. And you'll find out what the good drivers are about. Now, I do somewhat agree with the comments that were made by Josh Ginter, who's the MLA for Borderland, in questioning the immigration policies as it pertains to drivers coming into this country and operating these vehicles. And as I said, there's a connection here to some pretty shoddy driving schools out there that should not be in business. We need a massive clampdown on everything. Everything needs to come under full review as to how drivers come to the country, what their qualifications are before they are released on the road by themselves. Clearly, this young driver who's on the run right now had some issues in the truck that day. And those issues cost the life of a mother, of a wife, of a little girl who is a sister and a daughter. And nothing is going to bring them back. But as you are out there, folks, watch the big trucks. Sometimes they don't see you. Sometimes many of you get in my blind spots, and I'm desperately looking to see. But with the kind of equipment that we have in our trucks, I can assure you that if I were to put a signal on and try to move into that lane that you're in, the alarms go off in my truck. We have that technology in the company that I work for, and I'm glad we do. I did not embrace the camera wholeheartedly with any great amount of enthusiasm because it busts you on everything you do wrong. But at the same time, it's there to corroborate your story when you need a witness. And the camera is both your nemesis and your defense sometimes. But as you're out there, watch for those trucks. That driver may be having a bad day. He may be distracted. He may be driving when he should be sleeping. Be mindful. When you see something that doesn't look right and looks like it's going to turn out bad, take appropriate action. If necessary, in this case, stop on the highway and let the guy run through that stop sign. You can always go after him and get a plate and get the name on the door and the unit number and take action on it. But when we see this stuff happening, I think it's important that we report it. Today I was coming out of Omaha, Nebraska. I had a semi-trailer race up the backside of my car, and I was just doing maybe 2 or 3 miles under the posted limit. And he was so close to me that I couldn't read his license plate. He's tailgating me with a heavy equipment. I'm embarrassed to be in the profession with that guy. I took action. I got his unit number, I got his trailer number, and I called him into his company because that's the only way stuff like this is going to happen. It's going to take this kind of action on your behalf out there. When you see bad drivers, don't be afraid to make the call. Their company, if they're worth anything, will take action and cause a review to happen and question the driver. There's so much here, and I intend to follow this with a little bit further down the line as investigations happen, and what's happening right now is unfortunate. I mean, the young man is scared. He's on the run. I can understand that. But for goodness sakes, man up and own it. This is what you did. You are the perpetrator of this tragedy. You're going to have to own it, along with everybody else that's in your entourage, of including possibly the company owner and anyone else associated with getting this man on the road. These things are important. And I use the segment here, Caring for Kids, to highlight this, because this beautiful young girl, as described by her grandparents, is no longer with us. And the world is one less of a beautiful child that who knows could have been whatever. And on Sunday, I wanted to thank Harry. You know, he was on with me on Farm to Market. We talked about how a community can heal from a tragedy like this. It's so important that we embrace each other, that we love each other, that we're mindful of our situations around us. Keep your head on a swivel when you're out there. Be mindful. It doesn't matter if you have the right of way or not. You want to go home, if nothing else, to tell your loved one, hey, I just about had an accident today. I knew the guy wasn't going to stop. I knew he didn't see me. I got out of his way, and I lived to tell that story, because that's what you want in the end. So I want to thank you and ask you, as you watch our program here on Things That Matter, which goes off every Thursday at 6:30, I want you to like it and share it. I want you to share it because we do try to talk about things that matter here. And it's my passion to be here and my desire to be here to tell stories, to get the facts, to investigate the matter so that you and I can be both better informed as to what's going on and what the real truth is. So on that note, we're going to end the program a little early. and I'm going to welcome you back next week, 6:30 Central Standard Time, for Farm to Market with Harry Siemens, for Age Reversing Health with Judy Friesen, and for Caring for Kids. This is Carl Krebs wishing you a wonderful evening. God bless you wherever you are.
Imagine having no pain, sleeping through the night, having more energy, and reversing the aging process. Now imagine LifeWave doing that all naturally, without the use of harmful drugs. X39 is the most advanced patented light therapy in the world. LightWave is a simple wearable patch that you place on your body that stimulates the body to regenerate and heal itself. With more than 20 years of research and over 100 patents, LifeWave specializes in age-reversing all-natural health. Find out what the power of the patch can do for you. For more information or to join our LifeWave community, go to thingsthatmatter.ca/LifeWave. LifeWave, reversing the aging process naturally.